Welcome back. My name is Chris, and in this video, we're going to be taking a look at supply allocation in NetSuite. So first off, what is supply allocation? It's basically a tool set that enables you to control how and when incoming supply is going to be allocated, or you could say reserved, for specific demand. So what does that even mean? Think about it. We've got, let's say, one location. We have got a warehouse and we've got widgets. So for those widgets, we have supply comes in, and that supply can come from purchase orders, transfer orders from other locations, maybe even work orders where we're making the widgets. And then the widgets go out from a demand standpoint. And let's just keep it simple and say the demand is just sales orders. So we've got inventory in the warehouse, we have our supply coming in, we have our demand, and what the supply allocation configuration is going to allow us to do is not only just deal with the inventory on hand in terms of the fulfillment of orders, but also predict in the future what supply is coming in and basically set rules to say, okay, let's say we've got 5 sales orders. Well, we don't have enough inventory on hand to handle all of them at the same time. So we know we've got a couple purchase orders that are going to come in the door at later dates. So what we're going to say is we're going to state in our rules, let's say we prioritize things by ship date. So of these 5 sales orders, one of them is going to have the earliest ship date. We've got some inventory on hand. Great. That's going to go to that first sales order based on the rules that we've configured. Then we're going to wait for that next purchase order to come in. That's going to be enough widgets to handle 2 of the additional sales orders, but not necessarily just sales order number 2 and 3. Maybe based on our rules, we go with sales order 4 and 5. Those then get handled. Then the third or second purchase order comes in. That's enough for the remaining 2. Those get handled. So it's really predicting in the future what's coming in the door, what do we have on hand, and based on our rules, what should we be handling from a fulfillment standpoint first. So that's the basic concept of supply allocation, and it is not a tool or configuration that all companies need. There's really a specific set of circumstances that it works with best, where you could say companies would get the most advantage out of it. So first off, I would say companies that have a low volume of orders, so generally not e-commerce businesses where you have hundreds or thousands of orders in a very short period of time, but if you've got a low quantity of orders, and obviously as a result of that, you probably have high dollar value on each particular order, and especially if your lead times are longer. So if you know you're going to be getting widgets, like if you order them and you're going to get them 2 days later, well, then you probably don't need supply allocation, because it can be a little bit of a headache. You really need to think in the future and forecast things using supply allocation. So if you know you're going to get the widgets in 2 days, why not just deal with what you've got in your warehouse? Orders are coming in on the demand side, and you simply say, all right, we've got 500 widgets in the warehouse. We'll handle the first come, first serve. And then 2 days later, we'll get more widgets. We'll handle the remaining sales orders, no problem. If you've got lead times of, let's say, 3 weeks on your purchase order to get more widgets in the door, that's where you might start thinking. And we've got a handful of large orders. So let's say we know we've got one large order with Home Depot. So we're going to supply them with thousands of widgets. And we've got another order coming in from Lowe's, and they're also going to get hundreds and hundreds of widgets. So we know we've got weeks out before our purchase order comes in the door. We need to determine which one should we be going with. Maybe it's based on the customer's preference from our standpoint. Maybe it's based on the ship date, whatever you want. I'm going to show you some of the options you have available to you, but that's the logic that we're going to be applying here. And that's where supply allocation can come in handy. So with that in mind, let's dive into the system looking at supply allocation. All right, so here we are in the NetSuite system, and let's first take a look at the actual setup and configuration of supply allocations, which is definitely the most important part, because that's what's going to be setting things like the rules and how this thing operates. So first things first, we have to come up here to Setup, Company, Enable Features. And under Enable Features, there's 2 particular features that we have to turn on. So we're going to come over here to Items and Inventory, and we're going to scroll down here. And it's going to be right here, supply allocation and sales channel allocation. And you can read the descriptions. They're pretty straightforward. Both are required though. And if you've got them set up, for example, like supply allocation, you can't even utilize that in the first place if you don't have sales channel allocation set up. So you're going to have to turn them both on at the same time. And once these are set up, then we can come over here to setup, down to order management. And let's open up supply allocation. We're also going to open up sales channels and order allocation strategies. All of these are going to be important in various ways. So let's go first off with supply allocation setup. So this is where we're coming in, and it's first set on demand preferences. And this is really where we're stating what is the priority in which we're going to be addressing things. So is it order priority? Is it going to be, I mentioned that expected ship date, that's a pretty common one. Maybe it's based on commitments confirmed. It can be on the quantity fulfilled, the transaction date. You can specify whatever you want to have as these are the ones we're handling first. And there's actually a tier system. So you set the first thing that you want to handle, and then you can specify, okay, well, after that, let's say they both had the same expected ship date. Well, then after that, what's the next metric so that we know, well, this sales order should come before this one. So you can set those down here. And you do have a couple additional settings. I'm not going to be going through every single setting because there are quite a few. I'm going to talk about the core components. So this is very, very important. Then on the supply preferences side, this is where you're actually going to be taking the order allocation strategies and you're going to tie them in here as what's going to be dictating the supply. And order allocation strategies, which probably means nothing to you right now, this is where we're going to get it. I'd opened that tab up earlier. So let's take a look at a particular strategy. I'm going to edit on this first one. So we come here, and this is one of the main things we're going to be influencing. This is basically saying, all right, well, the supply is coming in. What kind of supply can we factor in to our supply allocation? Generally speaking, you'd want to include all of them. So everything from transfer orders and purchase orders, inbound shipments. But let's say blanket purchase orders. When you make your blanket purchase orders, they're very, you could say, done haphazardly, or they're not super specific and reliable in terms of dates. Well, in that case, maybe you don't want to include blanket purchase orders because that could throw a wrench into the system. You can specify specific things that are not going to be included. And honestly, you have a lot of other features here. Most of these are pretty self-explanatory. You can read the descriptions. It's not that complicated as long as you understand the basic premise of supply allocation. And whatever you're specifying here, again, once you make this particular one, which is called ACAP available firm, you then take this strategy and you tie it in here. Now, when we were on the order allocation strategies, the list, which I'll pull that up again, there's an enormous amount of allocation strategies. Most companies will have one or two. There's really not a need for most companies to have a huge amount of strategies. So you make one or two, and then you tie that in here, and that's what it's going to be based on. That's going to be the logic that the supply allocation is thinking with. And then one other thing that I had opened was the sales channels. So this is something that's just required as a part of the setup. Like I said, when you run enable features, you have to do supply allocation and sales channels. And the sales channels are very straightforward. You know, are you selling through online sales, wholesale, retailers, whatever are your core sales channels? Those would be created here. They're very simple. You literally just name them and that's it. And that is the main element of the configuration. However, once you have set up these configurations, these setups and strategies, then you need to set up the schedule where the strategies that you've created in these setups, it's going to go, okay, great. Let's look at all the purchase orders at this moment in time. Let's look at all the demand. Let's look at what we have in-house in the warehouse and decide what's the priority. What's the linking that we're going to go through? That doesn't just happen kind of on a, you could say, continuous basis where it's constantly updating, because that can cause problems in the system. You set it. It might be every day. You could set it every week. Whatever's relevant to your company, you go in and you set that schedule. And the way you do that is coming to transactions, order management, and we're going to come up here to allocate order and schedule. So this is where you set, let's create a new schedule. And you don't have to do this, but is by far the most commonly used method. Instead of doing it on a sort of manual basis where someone has to literally go in every day and run the strategy, you come in here, create the schedule, and run with that. So, and you'll see this kind of page in a lot of different things. You can set up many different schedules in NetSuite. You literally just specify what is the schedule going to be called, how often is it going to happen. Again, weekly, daily, these are pretty common. You specify how often is it repeating, what subsidiaries is it going to be tied to, specific times if you want. Oftentimes, you might want to have it run at, let's say, 5 in the morning, just before everyone's coming in to actually start utilizing the information based on the schedule that's just run. And that's how it works. You've set up what you want, you set your rules, you set how you want to treat the supply that's coming in, you set your schedule, and then it runs. Now let's take a look at, well, what is this actually going to be influencing in the system? When it's actually operating, what's going to happen? Well, let's take a look at a couple things. First off, let's look at a customer record. So I'll open that up. And then we've got a sales order here. So let's open that up as well. So on this customer record, once you enable features, you add in supply allocation, it's actually going to add a number of different fields into the customer records as well as on your sales orders. So for example, here on the customer, we now have two fields here, default order priority and then allocation strategy. So we can tie it into a specific strategy. We can also just say that this customer is an order priority 1. So if we had set on our rules that we wanted to look for order priority first, it's going to look for all the customers or all the orders tied to customers that have a priority of 1. Then it'll go to 2, 3, etc. Then we have on the sales order itself, and you can see it even gives us a little allocation alert right at the top. So that can be useful. But let's take a look at the additional fields that have been added as a part of enabling supply allocation. So we're going to scroll down to our item line level. And it looks like we just have one item here. And the particular field, or you could say column that we're looking at, is this allocated supply column. So this is where it's going in, and based on the rules we've set, based on the configuration of the schedule, it's gone, okay, we have this item. Here's how we want to allocate the supply. So we come in here, we click on that, and it looks like it said, okay, we've got 2 transfer orders that are going to come in, and those 2, one has a supply quantity of 2, one has a supply quantity of 1. That's what we're going to be utilizing to handle this particular sales order. So this is the supply. This is how it's been treated to handle this one particular element of demand. And we can see other information. It looks like in this case, we're significantly late in terms of actually handling and fulfilling this order. So this is the system trying to play catch up and going, all right, we're very late on these orders. We know we've got some supply coming in. How are we going to best handle? And I'm sure if this is just one sales order that's super late, we probably have a lot of other sales orders that are similarly quite late. So the system's going to go in, and whatever rules we set, whether it's based on the ship date, based on the order priority, etc., it's going to go, okay, well, these ones get handled first, then these ones, then these. It ties them to specific elements of supply coming in, and that's how it runs. That's really the simplicity of it. Now, let's say that it's running on automatic and that's fine, but there's instances where you want to manually handle some specific supply allocation. Well, of course, you can come in here and edit this record and actually change the allocated supply on the order itself. That is always an option. You can always come in here to transactions, back down to order management, and you can see here we've got a few different things. So let's open up allocate orders. So I'm going to open up that specifically, and then we'll get to this enter order reservation. And let's talk about the order reservation first. This is not commonly used, but this would be an instance where you know a particular item, let's say our widget, we know we're going to have a massive order for our widgets coming soon. So we want to reserve and say, great, we don't want a bunch of other sales orders coming in and getting committed and basically taking from our supply. We want to say, no. We know a purchase order, let's say, is coming in for all our widgets, let's say 1,000 widgets. We want to reserve those, lock them off, make sure they're not going to take taken for other things. That way, when the sales order and the demand does come in, we can attribute it appropriately and not have any issues from a supply demand standpoint for that, you could say, urgent or high priority order. So that's one tool you can utilize. And then on this tool, this is where you can come in, and this is one I would say you'd probably use a little bit more often. You specify a particular subsidiary, and often you'd specify it for a particular item. Because if you know you have, let's say, our widget, and the truck that's coming in from the widget, or maybe the shipping carrier, got delayed in a storm, we know it's going to be a week late. Well, this is where we'd go and say, okay, for that particular item, what are all the sources of demand that we know we need to figure something out for? We need to start manually rearranging things to handle the fact that this order is going to be coming in way late, and we still have these sales orders we need to address. Well, now we can come down here to this listing. We can see now, again, in this particular case, it's showing all items. But you could imagine if this was all one item and just all the various sales orders for that one item, we can see how is the system automatically treating these things and saying, okay, we're going to allocate these in this direction. Here's when it should ship out, etc. And we can come in and we can rearrange them. We can make modifications as needed. We can specify that certain ones should be handled first. We can come in here, literally select these things, and then come to the bottom and hit submit. So you do have that manual option in every instance. You can do it on the order itself. You can do it at this tool at kind of a higher level. And if you've got the prediction in, you can utilize those reservations as needed. So that's a quick look at supply allocation in NetSuite. If you'd like more information about inventory management, manufacturing, or even MRP, I have individual courses on every one of these topics, as well as a package for supply chain management that bundles all of them together. So I'll include a link for my website down below, and you can check out those courses. And if you found this video in particular helpful, please hit that like button and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. And with all of that in mind, I hope to see you in the next video.